Hello and welcome to the English Talk community. We're so glad you're here. If you're looking to practice your English and improve your speaking skills, you've come to the right place. Our mission is simple: to help you break through the barriers that are holding you back from speaking confidently in English. So, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with all the helpful tips and strategies we share to help you on your language learning journey. Now, let's talk about something that many learners struggle with: understanding English but not being able to speak it. If this is you, you're definitely not alone. This is a common challenge, and I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be this way. The key to unlocking your ability to speak English fluently lies in something often overlooked: your mindset. A lot of people believe that English is difficult, complex, or somehow out of their reach. This belief is one of the biggest barriers standing between you and fluency. Why? Because when you think something is difficult, you create a mental block. Your brain starts to believe that learning English is too hard, and as a result, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But here's the truth: English is not inherently difficult. In fact, the more you change the way you think about it, the easier it becomes to learn and speak. The first step to overcoming this challenge is changing your mindset. When you stop viewing English as something complicated or intimidating, you open up a world of possibilities. Your brain starts to approach learning with a sense of curiosity rather than fear. The issue isn't your ability to learn. It's the belief that learning English is too hard. The reality is that learning any language requires practice, patience, and the willingness to make mistakes. Mistakes are not a sign of failure. They are a crucial part of the learning process. Think about how children learn to speak. They don't sit down and study grammar rules for hours. They learn by listening, repeating, and practicing. They make mistakes, but instead of getting discouraged, they keep going. This is the approach we need to adopt as adults. Instead of getting stuck in the fear of making mistakes, embrace them. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn and improve. And once you start to see mistakes as a natural part of the learning process, you'll find that speaking English becomes the key to overcoming fear and anxiety. When speaking English is changing the way you approach learning. Once you let go of the idea that English is a huge mountain to climb, you begin to realize that every step you take is progress. This shift in mindset is crucial for you to feel truly comfortable speaking English, no matter your current level. Believe me, it's not about being perfect. No one expects you to speak English without making mistakes, and you shouldn't expect that from yourself either. What's important is practice. The more you practice, the more natural the language becomes, and this happens without you even noticing. By adopting a positive and accepting mindset, you create a more productive learning environment, where the focus is on progress, not perfection. Now imagine this situation. You're having a conversation and make a mistake. What happens next? If you focus on the mistake, the conversation will become tense, and your anxiety will only grow. But what if you simply move forward, correcting yourself in a calm manner and not putting too much importance on the error? This approach will not only ease your anxiety, but also help you build confidence in speaking. Mistakes are inevitable, and that's okay. Instead of thinking of mistakes as failures, think of them as stepping stones on your journey to fluency. Remember, when we learn to walk, we fall many times, but we get back up and keep going. Language learning is no different. The more you allow yourself to make mistakes and keep practicing, the more fluent you'll become. Changing your mindset. From one of fear to one of acceptance and growth is one of the most powerful things you can do to unlock your speaking ability. By embracing mistakes, you'll gradually feel more confident and comfortable with your speaking skills. To put this into practice, try repeating a positive affirmation every day. It can be something simple, like, "I can speak English," or "My English improves every day." The more you repeat these positive thoughts, the more your brain starts to believe them. Over time, this will help shift your mindset from one of doubt to one of confidence and possibility. As we move forward in this video, remember that the mindset shift we're talking about is the foundation of your learning journey. Once you embrace this new way of thinking, you'll find that speaking English becomes much easier, and it all starts with you believing that it's possible. Now that we've talked about the importance of shifting your mindset, let's dive into one of the most common obstacles learners face: translating in your head. If you find yourself constantly translating from your native language to English, it's time to stop. This habit slows down your speaking and makes the process feel more complicated than it really is. Think about it for a moment. When you translate mentally, you're essentially taking extra steps in the process of communication. First, you have to think of the idea in your native language. Then, you try to find the right words in English. And by the time you do that, the conversation has likely moved on. This mental translation slows you down and makes you feel less confident. So, what's the solution? Start thinking in English. This may sound challenging at first, especially if you've been translating for a long time, but trust me, it's possible. The more you practice thinking directly in English, the faster and more confident you'll become in your speaking. One effective way to begin thinking in English is by naming objects and actions in your environment. When you look around, try to name things in English. For example, if you see a chair, think chair. If you're cooking, think stir, boil, or chop. The more you associate English words with everyday objects and actions, the easier it will be to think in English naturally. But it doesn't stop there. You can also start forming simple sentences in your head. For instance, if you're walking to the store, you could mentally say, "I'm going to the store." It doesn't have to be complex or perfect. The goal is to get into the habit of forming thoughts in English rather than translating them from your native language. As you do this more often, you'll start to notice that the need to translate diminishes. Instead of thinking, "What's the word for this in English?" you'll simply think of the word right away. This shift takes time and practice, but it's incredibly effective in improving your fluency. Let's take a look at how you can start to apply this thinking in English strategy in real-life situations. To make this process easier, I'll walk you through a few everyday scenarios that many learners experience. The goal is to show you how you can shift your thinking from your native language to English without even realizing it. Imagine you're at the grocery store. You pick up a carton of milk, and in your head you might think, "I need to buy milk." But in your native language, this thought could be in a different way, like, "Eu preciso comprar leite" if you speak Portuguese. The first step in thinking directly in English is to try to switch that thought immediately. Instead of thinking about it in your native language, you would focus on the English version of that thought, "I need to buy milk." At first, it might feel a bit awkward, and that's totally normal. But the more you do it, the easier it will get. Next time you walk into the store, try to tell yourself in English what you're doing. "I am picking up the milk. I'm going to get some eggs. I need to grab some bread." This type of mental shift is small, but it adds up over time. By practicing these little changes in your daily routine, you'll find that your brain starts to naturally think in English. You might even notice yourself doing it without thinking, like when you're at home and you start saying things like, "I'm cooking dinner," or "I'm washing the dishes." You're no longer translating, but simply thinking in English. Another common situation where translation can become a barrier is when you're meeting someone new. Imagine you're at a party or an event where English is being spoken, and someone introduces themselves to you. At this moment, you might have a lot of thoughts racing in your head, trying to remember how to answer in English. You may even think to yourself, "How do I respond to this question in English?" Or, "What should I say next?" This is where translation slows you down. Instead of translating every thought, try to focus on the meaning behind the question and respond naturally. For example, if someone asks you, "How's your day going?" Instead of mentally translating the question into your native language, just think about the response you want to give in English. You could answer, "It's going great, thanks for asking," or "It's been a busy day, but good." When you stop translating, you'll find that your responses become more natural and conversational. The key here is to focus on the meaning and the intent behind the conversation, not on each word or phrase. By practicing this approach, you'll begin to develop more fluid thinking in English. Another situation that many learners face is when they're at work or school. Let's say you have to give a presentation or speak in front of a group of people. If you're constantly translating, it can make the process of speaking feel more stressful and difficult. You might spend too much time thinking about the grammar or the vocabulary rather than focusing on the message you want to convey. To combat this, try preparing in English beforehand. Write your presentation or talk in English, and then practice speaking it out loud. This will help you think directly in English rather than translating your ideas from your native language into English. You can even rehearse your presentation while doing everyday activities, like walking or driving, to help you become more comfortable with thinking in English. But how can you start to build this habit in your daily life? One effective way is to set a specific time each day to practice thinking in English. You don't have to do this for long. Just 10 to 15 minutes each day is enough to start. For instance, when you wake up in the morning, try thinking about your plans for the day in English. What do you need to do? What's on your schedule? I'm going to have breakfast. I'll go for a walk. I have a meeting at 2 p.m. By incorporating these simple thoughts into your routine, you're training your brain to automatically switch to English without the need for translation. As you continue to practice, you'll notice that you start to think in English more often, even when you're not consciously trying. It's important to remember that this process takes time. You won't magically start thinking in English overnight, but if you stick with it, you will see progress. The key is to practice consistently and to be patient with yourself. The more you expose yourself to English and create opportunities to think in the language, the easier it will become. As we wrap up this chapter, I want to leave you with one final tip. Be kind to yourself throughout this process. It's normal to make mistakes, and it's okay to feel uncomfortable at first. The more you practice thinking in English, the more natural it will become, and eventually, you'll stop needing to translate altogether. Keep practicing, stay patient, and remember, you're one step closer to fluency every time. In the previous chapters, we discussed shifting your mindset and learning to think directly in English. But what if I told you that you could make English a part of your everyday life without having to live in an English-speaking country? The truth is, creating an environment where English is constantly present is one of the best ways to speed up your fluency and make the language feel more natural. Let's start by looking at one of the most powerful tools at your disposal: your phone. Most of us spend a significant amount of time on our phones, scrolling through social media, checking emails, or texting friends. So, why not make your phone a part of your English learning process? Start by changing the language settings on your phone to English. This may seem like a small step, but it's a powerful one. When you use your phone in English, you'll be exposed to new vocabulary and sentence structures throughout the day. Every time you unlock your phone, you'll see English words and phrases, and this constant exposure helps reinforce your learning. You might even start to recognize new words that you wouldn't have noticed before. You can take this a step further by setting your social media accounts to English as well. When you scroll through your feed, you'll encounter English content, which can be a great way to improve your vocabulary and comprehension. Follow accounts that post in English, whether they're about your hobbies, interests, or news. By doing this, you'll create an immersive environment where English is always around you, and you'll be improving your language skills without even realizing it. Another way to bring English into your life is by watching videos or movies in English. Many people are hesitant to watch movies in English because they're afraid of not understanding everything, but this is actually one of the best ways to practice listening. Choose a movie or TV show you already know well, and watch it in English with English subtitles. This way, you can follow the plot and understand what's happening, but you'll also be learning how words and phrases are used in context. For example, let's say you're watching your favorite movie in English. You'll hear how native speakers naturally use contractions, how they stress certain words for emphasis, and how they manage their tone during conversations. All of these things will help you sound more like a native speaker when you practice speaking. Plus, by reading the subtitles while watching, you can reinforce vocabulary and make connections between written and spoken English. If you're a beginner or intermediate learner, you might find it helpful to watch children's shows or videos with simple language. These types of shows often use slower speech and clearer pronunciation, which will help you pick up on important patterns in the language. As you progress, you can move on to more complex shows or movies, but starting with simpler content is a great way to build your confidence and comprehension. But watching movies and using your phone are just the beginning. Another powerful strategy is to listen to podcasts in English while you're going about your daily activities. Whether you're cleaning, driving, or exercising, listening to podcasts is an excellent way to practice listening and improve your comprehension. There are podcasts for every interest and level, so you can easily find content that suits your taste and learning needs. For example, let's say you're interested in cooking. There are countless English language cooking podcasts that teach new recipes and cooking techniques. By listening to them, you're not only learning new vocabulary related to food and cooking, but you're also improving your listening skills in a relaxed, enjoyable way. Similarly, you can find podcasts about science, technology, culture, or anything else you're passionate about. The key here is to incorporate English into your daily life as much as possible. The more you surround yourself with the language, the more natural it will feel to speak it. And you don't need to make huge changes in your routine to do this. Just small adjustments can have a big impact. Another great way to immerse yourself in English is by speaking to yourself. Yes, you heard that right. Talking to yourself in English can be a highly effective practice. It might feel a bit strange at first, but when you practice speaking out loud, you start to think and speak in English more naturally. Try narrating your actions throughout the day. I'm cooking dinner, I'm going for a walk, or I'm writing a shopping list. By practicing these simple sentences, you'll build confidence and fluency over time. You can also try speaking in English with a language exchange partner or a tutor. If you don't have anyone to practice with, that's okay. You can join online language communities where people are eager to help you practice. There are many platforms that connect language learners, and even practicing for just 10 to 15 minutes a day can make a huge difference in your speaking ability. In the next part of this chapter, we'll look at how you can take your language immersion even further by integrating English into all aspects of your life. Whether it's through music, books, or social interactions, there are countless ways to surround yourself with English and make it a natural part of your day-to-day routine. The more you integrate English into your daily routine, the easier it becomes to think and speak in the language. And the best part is, you don't have to go out of your way to do it. It's about making small changes to your environment that will surround you with English, so it becomes second nature. For example, let's talk about your home. One simple but effective technique is labeling things around your house with their names in English. Stick a small note on your fridge that says fridge, on your door that says door, and so on. This method might seem a bit basic, but it's incredibly effective. Every time you see the label, your brain is making the connection between the object and the English word, reinforcing vocabulary in a way that doesn't require any extra effort from you. But you can take it a step further. Why not try describing what you're doing around the house in English as well? As you clean, cook, or organize, speak to yourself out loud in English. For example, when you're washing dishes, you could say, "I'm washing the dishes now," or "I'm rinsing the plates." This practice not only reinforces vocabulary, but also helps you get used to thinking in complete sentences. You'll be surprised at how quickly you begin to feel more comfortable using English in everyday situations. As you speak more often, even in these small ways, it starts to become a natural part of your routine. And the more you practice speaking in English, the easier it becomes to form sentences quickly and confidently. Let's not forget the power of listening. By simply making a habit of listening to English content during your daily activities, you'll expose yourself to a variety of accents, vocabulary, and ways of expressing ideas. Whether you're listening to a podcast, an audiobook, or a song, you're constantly training your brain to understand English in different contexts. This regular exposure will help you improve your comprehension and pronunciation. Imagine you're on your way to work and instead of listening to music in your native language, you switch to an English podcast. You could be learning about a topic that interests you, such as technology, history, or personal development. It's like having a mini lesson every day, and all you have to do is press play. Over time, this exposure will make it easier for you to recognize words, phrases, and even cultural references that you might not encounter in a textbook. Another great strategy is to consume English content that matches your personal interests. If you enjoy sports, for instance, you could follow English-speaking sports channels, watch matches with commentary in English, or read articles about your favorite teams in English. The key is to engage with content that excites you, so learning feels enjoyable and not like a chore. The more fun and engaging the content, the more likely you'll stick with it. You could also make English a part of your social life. Join English-speaking online groups or communities that match your hobbies or interests. Whether it's a gaming community, a book club, or a forum about your favorite TV show, these groups give you a chance to practice reading and writing in English while talking about something you enjoy. And if you're up for it, find people to chat with in English, even if it's just casual conversations online. If you don't feel comfortable speaking yet, try chatting in English first, then gradually increase your speaking practice. Another powerful technique is to make English a part of your travel experiences, even if you're not traveling abroad. The next time you plan a trip or a day out, try researching in English. Look up travel guides, restaurant reviews, or tourist attractions in English. This will help you not only with your language skills, but also give you insight into the culture of English-speaking countries. It's important to note that integrating English into your life doesn't mean you have to do it perfectly all the time. Don't stress if you make mistakes, whether you're speaking, writing, or reading. The goal is progress, not perfection. Every small step you take towards surrounding yourself with English helps you build the confidence and skills you need to use the language in real-world situations. And here's something else to consider. It's okay to feel overwhelmed at times. You're learning a new language and it can be challenging. But remember, the more you immerse yourself in the language, the more comfortable you'll become. It's like building muscle. At first, it may feel tough, but with consistent practice, you'll get stronger and more fluent. So, take a moment to think about how you can bring more English into your daily routine. It doesn't have to be a huge effort. It can be as simple as switching your phone settings to English, listening to a podcast while you cook, or reading an article online. Little by little, you'll find that English becomes an integral part of your day-to-day life, and as a result, your fluency will improve without you even realizing it. Keep practicing, and before you know it, speaking English will feel as natural as your first language. To truly master English, one of the most essential skills to develop is listening. We tend to focus a lot on speaking, but understanding how native speakers use the language is just as important. The key here is listening actively and repeating what you hear. When you listen to native speakers, you're exposed to the rhythm, pronunciation, and nuances of the language that books and classroom lessons can't fully teach you. So, let's explore how you can make listening a powerful tool in your language journey. One of the best ways to improve your listening skills is by using the technique of shadowing. Shadowing is when you listen to a piece of audio, whether it's a conversation, a podcast, or a video, and immediately repeat the words and phrases that are being said. The goal is to mimic the speaker as closely as possible, matching their tone, rhythm, and pronunciation. This method helps you become more familiar with how English sounds in real-life conversations and improves your ability to speak fluently. Let's break this down further. When you listen to a podcast or a conversation in English, pick a short clip, something that lasts about 30 seconds to a minute. Play the clip, and as soon as you hear it, repeat it out loud. Don't pause the audio, try to keep up with the speaker. This exercise forces your brain to process the language in real time, just like it would if you were having a conversation with someone. You'll start to notice how quickly you can repeat words and phrases, and this speed will eventually translate to your speaking ability. For example, imagine you're listening to a short interview on a podcast. The speaker says, "In this episode, we're going to talk about the impact of technology on society." As soon as you hear it, repeat the sentence out loud, matching their intonation and emphasis. By doing this repeatedly, you're not only improving your pronunciation, but also training your brain to think faster in English. It becomes a conversation between you and the speaker, even if they're not physically present. Another important aspect of improving your listening and speaking skills is understanding how words are connected in natural speech. In English, we often don't pronounce words the way they're written. For example, we say gonna instead of going to, or wanna instead of want to. These informal expressions are common in everyday speech, and learning to recognize them will make you sound more natural when you speak. When you listen to native speakers, pay attention to these shortcuts and contractions. It's important to understand what they mean, so you can use them in your own conversations. Again, shadowing is a great way to practice this. By repeating sentences with contractions and connected speech, you'll start to sound more like a native speaker, and it will become easier to understand fast-paced conversations. One more tip for improving your listening is to slow down the audio if needed. Many platforms, like YouTube or podcast apps, allow you to adjust the playback speed. If you find that native speakers are speaking too quickly for you to keep up, try slowing the audio down to 0.75x or 0.5x. This gives you more time to process the language and helps you catch words that might have been difficult to understand at full speed. At first, it may feel a bit frustrating to try and catch every word, but this is all part of the learning process. Don't worry if you don't understand everything the first time. Focus on getting the general meaning and gradually try to catch more and more details. Over time, you'll start to recognize familiar words and phrases, and your ability to understand spoken English will improve dramatically. It's also helpful to listen to a variety of accents and speaking styles. English is spoken around the world, and every region has its own way of pronouncing words and structuring sentences. While American English is widely used in media, British, Australian, Canadian, and other accents are just as important to recognize. The more accents you're exposed to, the better you'll become at understanding English in real-life situations. To put this into practice, try listening to podcasts, watching movies, and consuming content from different English-speaking countries. This variety will not only improve your listening skills, but also broaden your understanding of how the language is used in different cultural contexts. As you continue to listen and repeat, you'll begin to notice improvements in your speaking as well. Your brain will start to associate the sounds you hear with the correct pronunciation, making it easier for you to replicate them when you speak. Over time, this will lead to better fluency, as you'll be able to produce the sounds of English more accurately and confidently. Now, one of the most effective ways to practice this technique is by recording yourself. When you listen to a conversation or audio clip, try repeating it out loud, and then record yourself speaking. Afterward, compare your recording to the original audio. This allows you to identify areas where you may need to improve your pronunciation, intonation, or pacing. It also helps you track your progress over time. At first, you might find that your recordings don't sound as polished as the original audio. That's completely normal. The more you practice, the more natural your speaking will become. Recording yourself helps you catch mistakes and refine your speaking skills in a way that listening alone cannot. By consistently practicing shadowing, recording yourself, and actively engaging with English content, you'll start to notice a huge difference in your speaking ability. You'll become more comfortable with the rhythm and flow of the language, which will make conversations feel less intimidating. In fact, you might even begin to think in English without having to translate, which is a major breakthrough in language learning. Another powerful tool to improve both your speaking and listening is to practice with a variety of content. We all have different tastes and interests, so why not use that to your advantage? Whether you're passionate about sports, technology, cooking, or even true crime, there is an endless amount of content available in English that matches your hobbies. The more you engage with content that excites you, the more motivated you will be to keep practicing. Let's say you're really into technology. You could watch tech review videos, listen to podcasts where experts discuss the latest gadgets, or read articles from English-speaking tech websites. Not only will you be learning about something you love, but you'll also be exposed to the specific vocabulary used in that field, making your language skills much more specialized and relevant. Over time, you'll feel more confident speaking about these topics because you've been learning the vocabulary and expressions naturally through content you enjoy. Similarly, if you're a fan of movies or TV shows, watching them in English is an excellent way to improve your listening skills. You can start with subtitles in your native language to understand the context, then switch to English subtitles as you become more confident. Eventually, you may even feel comfortable watching without subtitles at all. This method helps you familiarize yourself with slang, idiomatic expressions, and cultural references, which can be challenging in formal learning environments, but are essential to understanding real-life conversations. In fact, try mimicking the characters in your favorite shows. Pause the video at any given moment and repeat the dialogue as closely as you can. You can practice the intonation, rhythm, and even the emotions expressed in the scene. This not only helps with pronunciation, but also boosts your confidence in speaking in a natural and conversational way. Plus, you get to have fun while learning. If you're someone who enjoys reading, consuming English content in written form is another great way to develop your language skills. Try reading news articles, novels, or blogs in English. Start with simpler texts, such as children's books, or articles that interest you, and gradually challenge yourself with more complex material. The key is to ensure that the content you're reading is enjoyable, so you don't feel burdened by it. Additionally, when you come across new words, take a moment to look them up and try to incorporate them into your vocabulary. Instead of just memorizing the word, practice using it in different sentences. This will help you retain the word in your long-term memory and also make your speech sound more natural. You might even write down the word in a notebook along with sentences or situations where you could use it. One thing that might seem intimidating at first is speaking to others in English. But here's the thing. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. The more you speak, the better you'll become. Try to find language partners or conversation groups where you can practice speaking in a relaxed environment. Many people feel nervous when speaking a foreign language, but the reality is that most people are supportive and understanding of language learners. If you don't have anyone to speak with right now, don't let that stop you. You can practice speaking English by talking to yourself. It may feel awkward at first, but when you're alone, you have the freedom to practice without the fear of judgment. Talk about your day, describe what you're doing, or discuss a topic that interests you, all in English. This may sound strange, but it's an effective way to get used to forming sentences and using new vocabulary. To make this even more effective, try thinking in English during your daily tasks. Instead of translating what you see or hear into your native language, try to immediately think of the English equivalent. For example, if you see a picture of a dog, don't think, "Iso é cachorro." Think, "This is a dog." The more you train your brain to think in English, the less you will rely on translation, and eventually, the language will flow more naturally in your mind. It's also helpful to take note of your progress. Don't just focus on your mistakes, or the things you still need to work on. Celebrate the small wins along the way. Maybe you had a conversation with a native speaker and understood most of what they said. Maybe you watched a movie in English and understood everything without subtitles. These accomplishments are significant milestones in your language journey and should be celebrated. In addition to celebrating small victories, be patient with yourself. Language learning is a gradual process, and it's normal to have days when you feel stuck or frustrated. But as long as you keep practicing, you will continue to improve. Remember, even native speakers make mistakes, so it's okay for you to do the same. What matters most is that you keep going, keep practicing, and stay consistent. Finally, the most important thing to keep in mind is that language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. Don't rush the process. There's no need to pressure yourself to be fluent right away. Fluency comes with time and practice. Focus on enjoying the journey, finding ways to make English a part of your daily life, and embracing the learning process, even when it gets tough. The more you expose yourself to the language, the more comfortable you'll become with it. Whether you're listening to English podcasts, watching movies, or speaking to yourself, every little bit counts. And as you continue to engage with the language, you'll find that speaking English becomes easier and more natural with time. So keep practicing, stay consistent, and most importantly, have fun with it. When it comes to speaking English, one of the biggest barriers many people face is fear. The fear of making mistakes, of being judged, or of not being understood can be overwhelming. But here's the thing. Everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers. Mistakes are an inevitable part of learning, and they're actually one of the best ways to improve. The key is to not let fear hold you back. If you think about it, when we were children, we didn't learn to speak our first language perfectly on the first try. We made mistakes constantly, but over time, those mistakes became opportunities to learn. The same principle applies to learning English. You're not going to speak perfectly right away, and that's completely okay. What matters is that you speak anyway, regardless of the mistakes. Every time you speak, you're practicing and improving. A great way to start building confidence is to practice speaking every day, even if it's just for 15 minutes. Consistency is key when it comes to language learning. The more you speak, the more comfortable you'll become. If you don't have a conversation partner, don't worry. You can still practice on your own. You can talk to yourself, describe what's happening around you, or even practice reading out loud. These small daily speaking habits will help you overcome the initial fear and get used to speaking in English. Let's say you're preparing for a job interview in English. You might feel nervous about being able to answer the questions fluently or using the correct vocabulary. Instead of focusing on perfection, practice speaking about the topic beforehand. Record yourself answering common interview questions in English. Then, listen to your recording and evaluate where you can improve. This allows you to hear your progress and identify areas for improvement. You might realize that certain words or phrases are difficult for you, and you can work on those specific areas. Another way to reduce the fear of speaking is by adopting the 3-second rule. This rule encourages you to answer quickly in conversation, even if you're unsure. It helps you avoid overthinking and second-guessing yourself. When you hesitate, your brain tends to overanalyze, and that's when mistakes or self-doubt creep in. By practicing the 3-second rule, you give yourself less time to overthink, and your responses become more natural. For example, imagine you're having a conversation with someone in English, and they ask you a question like, "What do you like to do in your free time?" Instead of thinking too much about the perfect answer, try to respond immediately. I like to watch movies and go hiking. Even if the response isn't perfect, the important thing is that you spoke confidently and didn't let the fear of making a mistake stop you. Over time, this will help you become more fluid in your speaking. It's also essential to remind yourself of your progress. When learning a language, it's easy to get discouraged by the things you still can't do, but it's crucial to focus on how far you've come. Take a moment to reflect on the skills you've developed and the improvements you've made. For example, think about how much easier it is for you to understand English now compared to when you started. Or maybe you've been able to hold a short conversation in English with a native speaker. Celebrate these small wins. In addition, make sure to create a supportive environment for yourself. Surround yourself with people who encourage your learning and help build your confidence. Whether that's a language partner, a teacher, or even a community of people who are also learning English, having a support system can make a big difference. If you don't have a language partner in person, look for online communities or social media groups where you can connect with others who are on the same language learning journey. Engaging with these groups can help you stay motivated and feel less isolated. You may also want to consider joining group activities where you can practice speaking English in a low-pressure environment. Many language schools and online platforms offer group conversation classes or meetups where learners can practice speaking with others. The key is to find an environment where you feel comfortable making mistakes and growing at your own pace. When you focus on making progress rather than being perfect, you'll start to see your confidence grow. And as you build your confidence, you'll also see improvement in your fluency. The more you practice speaking, the more natural it will feel, and soon enough, you'll be able to have entire conversations without overthinking every word. It's all about taking that first step, practicing consistently, and not letting fear hold you back. Another important part of building confidence is reinforcing positive thoughts. It's easy to fall into negative self-talk, especially when you make a mistake or don't feel like you're progressing as quickly as you'd like. But it's crucial to replace those negative thoughts with positive affirmations. Instead of thinking, "I'll never speak fluently," try thinking, "I'm improving every day." Remind yourself that learning a language is a process, and every mistake is simply a part of that process. One technique to do this is to use affirmations or motivational quotes to boost your self-esteem. For instance, you could write down a phrase like, "I am confident in my English skills," and say it to yourself every day. By repeating these positive statements, you're rewiring your brain to approach language learning with confidence and optimism. Remember, language learning is a journey. Don't rush it. Embrace the process, mistakes and all, and focus on your progress rather than perfection. As you practice speaking, stay consistent, use techniques like the 3-second rule, and surround yourself with supportive people. You will see your confidence grow. Soon you'll be speaking English with ease, and that initial fear will be a thing of the past. When it comes to expanding your vocabulary, many people make the mistake of trying to memorize long lists of words. While this might work for short-term recall, it's not the best strategy for truly internalizing words and being able to use them in conversations. Instead of relying solely on memorization, try to learn vocabulary in context. This means learning words by seeing them used in sentences, stories, and real-life conversations. When you encounter a new word, don't just memorize its definition. Try to see how it's used in different contexts. For example, let's say you come across the word resilient. Instead of just memorizing its meaning, look for examples of how it's used in sentences. You could find a sentence like, "She was resilient in the face of adversity," or "The community showed resilience after the storm." By seeing the word in context, you'll start to understand its meaning more deeply, and you'll be able to use it more naturally when speaking. Another effective technique is repetition. Repetition is one of the most powerful tools when it comes to language learning. The more you encounter a word, the more likely you are to remember it. But repetition doesn't mean just reading the word over and over again. It means actively engaging with it. For instance, once you learn a new word, try to use it in sentences as much as possible. You could write a few sentences using the new word, or try to use it in conversations with a language partner. In addition to using new words in sentences, it's also helpful to revisit them regularly. This is where the concept of spaced repetition comes into play. Spaced repetition is the idea that you review words at increasing intervals, which helps to move the words from your short-term memory into your long-term memory. You can use apps, or flashcards to help with spaced repetition, but it's important to also actively try to use the words in real conversations or writing. To make this process even more effective, try associating new words with visual or emotional cues. For example, if you're learning the word euphoric, you could associate it with the feeling of winning a big game or hearing great news. By linking the word to a strong image or emotion, it becomes much easier to remember. Another great way to build your vocabulary is by reading and listening to content in English. When you read or listen to something in English, you're constantly exposed to new words and phrases. Start with material that interests you, whether it's books, articles, podcasts, or even songs. As you read or listen, take note of any unfamiliar words and look them up. But don't stop there. Try to use those words in your own writing or conversations. The more you practice using new vocabulary, the more it will become a natural part of your language. It's also a good idea to create a personal vocabulary journal. Whenever you come across a new word, write it down, along with its meaning and an example sentence. Then, review your journal regularly to keep the words fresh in your mind. You could even challenge yourself to use 5 new words from your journal in conversations during the week. This will encourage you to actively use your expanding vocabulary in a real-world context. Learning vocabulary isn't just about memorizing individual words, it's also about learning phrases and expressions that native speakers use in everyday life. This is especially important for improving your speaking fluency. When you learn a phrase rather than just a single word, you're learning how to use that word in a natural way within a sentence. For example, instead of just learning the word generous, you could learn the phrase, "He's really generous with his time." This will make your speech sound much more fluid and natural. When you listen to native speakers, pay attention to the phrases they use in their conversations. You might hear expressions like, "on the other hand," "by the way," or "as a matter of fact." These phrases are used in everyday speech, and by incorporating them into your own language, you'll sound more like a native speaker. Another powerful technique to expand your vocabulary is by learning synonyms and antonyms. For example, if you learn the word happy, try to learn synonyms like joyful, content, and pleased. On the other hand, also learn the antonyms like sad, disappointed, and unhappy. By learning words in relation to other words, you'll deepen your understanding of their meanings and learn to use them more effectively. Finally, remember that learning vocabulary is a lifelong process. You'll never know every word in the English language, and that's okay. The key is to keep learning and using new words as you encounter them. Don't worry if you forget a word or if it takes a while to remember it again. Just keep using the techniques we've discussed, and over time, you'll see your vocabulary and your confidence grow. One last tip is to keep challenging yourself. Once you feel comfortable with a certain set of vocabulary, push yourself to learn more advanced words or phrases. Gradually increasing the difficulty of the material you're reading, listening to, or speaking will ensure that you continue to expand your vocabulary and improve your language skills. As we come to the end of this video, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've discussed so far. Learning to speak English fluently isn't something that happens overnight, but by following the steps we've covered, you're already well on your way to success. Remember, the key to speaking confidently in English is consistency. The more you practice speaking, the more comfortable you'll become, and the better your fluency will get over time. You've learned that fear is one of the biggest obstacles in the language learning process. The fear of making mistakes or not. Being perfect can hold you back, but embracing mistakes as part of the learning journey is crucial. By practicing regularly, setting small goals, and pushing yourself to speak even when it feels uncomfortable, you're building the foundation for fluency. We also talked about the importance of thinking in English rather than translating. It might seem difficult at first, but with time and consistent practice, you'll begin to think more naturally in English. By labeling objects around your house, describing what's happening in your day, and immersing yourself in English through music, podcasts, and videos, you'll gradually start to make English a part of your daily life. And when it comes to building your vocabulary, remember that repetition, context, and associations are your best friends. Rather than trying to memorize long lists of words, focus on learning words in context, using them in sentences, and exposing yourself to English content on a regular basis. This will help the new words stick and become part of your active vocabulary. The key takeaway here is that learning English is a journey, not a destination. There will be challenges along the way, but with each step, you're making progress. The important thing is to keep practicing and keep speaking. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes or if you're not perfect. What matters is that you're taking action and moving forward. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join the English Talk community. We're here to help you practice and improve your English so you never have to feel stuck again. With regular practice and the right mindset, you'll soon be speaking English with confidence and fluency. So, let's keep learning together. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Keep practicing, and remember, you've got this.